Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Father Joe Podcast. The Father Joe Podcast, proudly supported by our great friends at Hoot McInerney Starlink and 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. Today, I want to talk to you about the Lincoln Driver Assist technology. It's called the Lincoln Copilot 360, and it's so unique, so comprehensive, that Lincoln has trademarked it. That's right. It's a collection of the most popular driver assist technologies designed, available anywhere. They help you keep it easy and driving safely. Now it includes blind spot detection. Driving forward assistance. Allow me to explain that a little bit. If you get too close to a car, you're going to get a beep, 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 beep. Lane on course alert detection, which I love. For example, if you start to stray from your lane, you get that rumble strip feel when you're in a construction zone. Rear view backing up, monitoring and assist, you love that. Parallel parking assist. Explore the 2019-2020 vehicles that offer Lincoln Copilot 360 by stopping by Hoot McInerney Starlink and 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, home of the Star Treatment. I'm Ken Calvert alongside my good friend Father Joe Grimaldi, and today our topic is, what happens when a Catholic priest burns out? You're probably wondering why I picked that topic. That's where you say, yes, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
I got a text from you earlier today saying you're going to be late for the podcast because, quote, I have a children's mass at 8:30 followed by a sad funeral. So sorry, so many sad funerals. You're a retired senior priest. Retired is a joke, by the way. It's a total joke.
Not,
You're not retired. But on your card it says...
Number-wise, I'm retired.
All right, I wrote down events, dinners, a full plate of mass schedules at several churches, weddings, funerals, confession, counseling, prepping for homilies. It never ends.
It doesn't.
How on God's green earth do you recharge your batteries? How do you do it?
I don't know. There are times when I dream. I dream of having a retired man's schedule. And what I mean by that, it would be nice for me to have just, pushing 80, one mass on Sunday, maybe 3 or 4 during the week, and leaving it at that. And on occasion, a funeral or a wedding and so on. However, it doesn't work that way. When you work in a Catholic church, whether it be the one where I say most of my masses, what happens is this, that you not only have your schedule, but things come up, of course, in the church throughout the day. Oh, you know what? Let's ask Joe. He can do that. So we'll ask him, and before you know it, what turns out to be a very easygoing day ends up with a whole bunch of other stuff that you never expected. It's very hard to say no to those things, particularly when you know the source of what those things are, because very often we're dealing with tragic events, and they happen all the time. They don't happen when I say, they just happen all the time. And for me to say no to things of that sort would be, well, I just couldn't do it. Now, that's besides the regular schedule. Now, for example, doing children's masses, I don't do them that often, but I did this morning, and it was really interesting because the preparation time is almost double what you have to do when you do a regular mass. You have to be careful about the vocabulary you use, because you want to get across the right idea, and at the same time, it has to be understandable. If you use, jokingly, I say 3 or 4 syllable words, kids might not be able to understand what that is. So the thing is this, that trying to get across the idea to a young one, try to think the way they would think, and then come across with some concept that they might understand. And that is very difficult to do because as an adult, you're not used to doing that. And so that if you sit down and write some presentation, that's fine. But a presentation that's meant for adults is very different. That's what's meant for little kids.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to mention is this. A lot of people assume that when you're speaking to little kids, well, you don't have to say all that much that's important. Well, yes and no. Maybe the content is not going to be, all sorts of paragraphs on one idea. But what's important is this, that the one idea that you do have has to be said properly so that they can understand. Now, one of the ways you do that, you might use the Socratic method where you just ask the student, what does that mean? For example, to whom much is given, much is expected. Now, you could throw out that statement, which I did this morning, and then ask several people to respond. And, they all have different answers. And the other thing, too, you have to be careful that you don't want to hurt their self-image, you know what I mean? Oh. So you have to be very careful and say, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good point. Now, let's see what Jimmy has to add to that. Or let's see what Mary Ellen has to add to that. And so this is the way you could get other people involved. Eventually, you might get some sort of an answer that resembles what it means when the Lord says, to whom much is given, much is expected. Mm-hmm. Like the one example I used today was, hey, if an 8th grader does something that's questionable, and a first-year student, a first grader, does something questionable, well, the 8th grader knows better. And it's not the same as what the little first grader says or thinks. So that you have to be careful. To whom much is given, much is expected.
Sure.
Obviously, the first grader, he has limited abilities. The 8th grader should know better. So anyway, you try to bring those points across, but using examples that they can relate to.
You go from that at 8:30 this morning.
Right.
Dealing with these wonderful, fresh faces.
Correct.
First grade through 8th grade.
And singing beautiful hymns.
Yeah. And you follow that with the funeral of a young person who suddenly passes away. Man, that's really a heavy lift for me to try and imagine what it's like for you to go from a children's mass to, as you put it, a sad funeral. So sorry, so many sad funerals. How do you do it? How did you do it? How are you feeling right now?
Well, actually, right now I feel exhausted, to be honest with you.
I can tell. I mean, you sound great, but I can tell that you're spent.
But you see, a number of days before the actual funeral, you're meeting with the family, the parents, and anybody else who would like to offer their comments. And that in itself is good. But by the same token, if you have a funeral every day this past week, and Saturday as well, that's a lot, because you have to keep in mind that these are separate funerals, separate people, separate ways of looking at death, and separate ways of handling it. And so that today, of course, was very special. 26 years old. The parents are devastated. The friends, well, they don't understand. They're hurting like you wouldn't believe. Uh-huh. You try to wonder, what can you say to ease the pain a little bit? One of the things I did is I used the Gospel of Matthew, where Matthew speaks about the oxen as they do the farm work. This is what Jesus was familiar with in those days, was farm work. And so he brings up the oxen who share the pulling of the load, whatever it is, okay? They share it. So the grief, which is so horrible that the family is experiencing, has to be shared. Otherwise, it's completely unbearable. And so that bringing that image, Jesus wants us to, how does he put it? He says, if you share, the burden. It's light. And it becomes lighter the more we're able to walk next to each other and support one another. And so this is what you could try to bring across. Because let's face it, the deceased is at peace. The deceased is not having to face life's challenges anymore. So it is the family that remains. They're the ones that are hurting, and they're the ones that need soothing. They need comforting. And so it's only that kind of thing from Scripture that can help them.
I don't know how you do it. I really don't, because number one, I'm one of those guys, and I don't know what category or name they would put on it, but I cry at a Lions game. Well, we all do. So,
yes, lately, of course.
Pardon my joke. But seeing a group of youngsters, all probably in their 20s, and also the family realizing that today, of course, you just began the process. You only started the beginning of what's going to be a really tough stretch for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
They're going to carry this cross, this burden, whatever description you want to give it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. See, and that makes me sad.
And what you can add to that, the deceased, who was 26,
right,
left a 4-year-old child.
Oh, man. And there's too much of that, and that could be...
Well, you have to pray that, and he loved that child. He loved that child. Everyone could attest to that who was there. Mm-hmm. And so you have to pray that this child, as he grows up, knows that his father loved him.
Mm-hmm. Well, was it tragic? We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
It's tragic that he's been taken away from us.
It's tragic that he's been taken away.
Yeah.
With that said, you said something at the front end of your answer that you're exhausted.
Yes.
And you're supposed to be retired. You moved back here from Hawaii because you're retired. You wanted to be back in this area, people that you knew. But, Joe, I've never seen you working harder, including me piling on by making you show up here once a week to do these podcasts.
Working with you is a delight.
You don't realize how much we get from you sharing
thank you.
What you do with us, because what I try and do is put it on that sort of a level where we can understand just what goes on inside the body, mind, and soul of Father Joe Grimaldi.
Sure.
Including having to say Mass for a group of people that went to Brother Rice 50 years ago, which you did, and you did a beautiful job. But with that said, you're exhausted. Joe, you've got to learn to say no. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm not answering the Archbishop's call. It's my decision whether to do it or not. It's just that the different parishes have needs. And many of the parishes, or some of the parishes, have pastors that are not feeling well, and they need help. Where do they turn? I don't know. I hate to say no to something like that. You hate to say no to the person who is in charge of getting priests to help out on Sunday, and they've called all these other places and they can't get somebody. What do? You say no. Well, I have a hard time doing that. Granted, that's one of the things I have to learn is to say, okay, I can't do it. And it's as simple as that. Just to say I cannot do it.
Yeah. But what's it going to take for you to do that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because my dream is, I suppose a lot of priests might dream this, is to reach a point in life when you could comfortably say, and I'm speaking, I don't mean somebody who is just 40 or 50. I'm talking someone who's 80, okay?
Yeah.
Or 79 or whatever the case might be.
Who loves to walk?
Yes.
Who loves to walk?
Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do that?
How about walking a nice beach?
Yes.
Watching a sunset.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe even at the end of the day, having a cocktail.
Why not?
Watching the sunset. Yeah. Why not?
So these are the things that go through your mind. Maybe it would be a time when you could say Mass on Sunday once.
Sure.
Instead of 3 and 4 times. And then maybe during the week, 3 or 4 Masses. It's not that you're going to you never get a vacation from prayer. We shouldn't. we should pray all the time.
Oh.
It's not that I'm trying to eliminate prayer. Okay?
I can pray while walking on a beach.
Yes, and you can pray beautifully.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, probably some of the best prayers I've ever said
Correct.
have been walking on a beach.
I'm with you.
Watching the sunset saying, thank you, God. You delivered a beauty for me today.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. People take that for granted.
Yeah.
But I think those are the things that go through my mind. Maybe someday.
You said you dream. You said it's a dream.
It's a dream, yeah.
Joe, you're 80 years old or soon to be. Live the dream. It's time. It's time.
It's okay.
Do you need somebody to say, call my agent, Ken Calvert?
And I'm not blaming the bishop. He doesn't have anything to do with it.
Well, I was just going to say, if you wanted to, if you actually medically just decided that if you did not unplug, you would implode. I mean, would you then approach the archbishop and say, I need to just literally take 1 month and totally recharge?
No, he's not in charge of me, so it doesn't matter.
You could do that independently?
Independently. I could do it now, but I don't.
But you won't or don't?
I don't.
Why won't you?
It's not that I won't, I don't.
Okay. You know, Joe, people are unfortunately not going to stop dying.
No.
People are not going to stop getting married. Last time I checked, there's going to be at least 3, 4, 5 masses over a weekend, each and every weekend. Yeah. The last time I checked the calendar, there's going to be Christmas, there's going to be Easter, there's going to be a whole bunch of things that are going to be coming up. I don't want to feel bad about this.
I don't want to feel bad about it either, but by the same token,
I need you to stay healthy, bro. We got work to do.
I don't know what the happy medium is, but yeah, it would be nice to have that dream that I mentioned. It doesn't work that way. It's not like, some days I think I want to be a bank teller. And you know why?
Why?
Well, you can guess, huh? You show up at 9 o'clock, you finish at 3, and you don't bring any work home.
Yeah.
That's it. You show up the next day, 9
unless you're a
thief.
3.
Right. Not if you're looking for manager or anything like that. Yeah. And I'm way beyond that. I don't need to be a manager.
Yeah.
But that would be a nice job because no worries. You finish at a certain time. You know it's going to end that way the next day. And so but with the kind of work that we're involved in, it doesn't, how should I put it? There isn't such a clear-cut ending.
Yeah.
There's always leftover stuff that has to be taken care of.
Joe, we're not going to edit this out, but we had 2 pings, meaning you got texts while we were doing this podcast. And why do I fear that it was, hi, Father Joe, it's blank. Can you please give me a call? I have a favor to ask. And that's what came in. You're looking at me like, why would you say that? That's what happened. And it happens all the time.
It does, yes. It does.
Well, I'm not trying to hit up. I just thought about you a lot. I think about you every day anyway, but, you pray for me, I pray for you. I just think that it's about time that you find a way to manage a little more Joe time and a little less everybody else time. I know it's hard. I know that people want me back on the radio horribly. Well, maybe not.
They do.
But, you see, I realize that I'm happier now having a segment each and every week with Father Joe Grimaldi. But I want you to take into account that I, for the first time, get to sit across from you, telling you that you're in great health. You seem like you're as, what's the word? How do you say it? Is it ebullient?
I hope so.
Yeah, so do I. You come through the front door, ready to go. And I realized today when I saw that text, I thought, this poor guy never has a chance to just sit down. I know you're a fan of old movies.
But I'm sitting down right now, so I'm okay.
Well, let's say we end the podcast and put on an old movie.
Okay, why not?
Pick one. You want a Western?
It happened one night. That's enough.
All right. Hold on, folks. Hey, listen, we'll get back to you on the next Father Joe podcast. I'm Ken Calvert, and yes, priests do get burnt out on occasion. Thank them. Thank them all for how hard they work.
You're welcome, and I look forward to speaking to you and with you and listening to you again. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.